Hello and welcome to my advanced engine scripting demonstration video. First off, I'm going to start with the projectile weapons. So I've got a grenade launcher and a rocket launcher and some grenades of ammo type. This turret here also uses a projectile to damage the enemies. If I just fire this, you can see it fires like a projectile. It's not particularly accurate at the minute because it's based off the animation, but then I can switch to the instant fire weapons, which just use line traces and a different ammo type. And this minigun as well uses a line trace to damage the enemies as well. So I can shoot and the shotgun as well, just pick some more ammo. Then next we have the pawns. This is the same as pawn as the character, so I can switch to it, and it'll also have an inventory which is just empty at the minute, but if I pick stuff up it will add it to the inventory. And then you can see when I switch back to the original character, he's got different items in his inventory, so they're stored locally and they don't get destroyed at all when you switch. So next one I've got, this pawn as well has a different functionality. It's got like a different movement. It faces in the direction it's moving, and it can't jump, and it's got less health as well. So next up is the direct references. These two are separate blueprints, and it's basically this directly references the door blueprint to tell it to open. That's about it. And then the multi-objects, so these targets tell the manager here to they fire an event dispatcher, and it just turns the light on, and then it detects how many it has, how many have been hit, and it knows whether to turn it on or not. So next is the enabling input to an actor for the player controller. So at the minute if I press 2 it does nothing, but if I walk into the radius then it enables the input from the controller to the actor, and you can just turn the light on and off. You don't have to be looking at it or anything, just the input is inside of this blueprint. Then next is the interface. So a lot of my blueprints use interfaces, but here's a good example where if you look at the object, it'll tell it to begin the outline, and when you look away from it to a new actor, so it's doing a ray trace to a new actor, it will tell it to stop the outline again. So then when you pick it up, it messages it to say to add it to the inventory, and the inventory will ask for its item data and then just add it to the array in the inventory, and then if it can be added it returns back to that actor and tells it to destroy itself. So next you have the inventory itself, where the inventory is an array of structure, and so inside the structure is all of the item information you need to know about the pickup items, so such as the static mesh, the what blueprint to spawn when you drop them, so it has a reference to which blueprint it needs to spawn when you drop it. That's just a variable inside the components themselves, and there's also a weight limit, so you see there's 31.5 out of 50 there. And if I pick more stuff up, it'll say inventory full in the top left there. But then when I drop them, the weight goes down, and you can pick more stuff up again. That's about it. So next is the enemy manager. This basically spawns enemies in waves. So it starts off with just a few, and when the turrets destroy them all, then the enemy manager will then detect that they've all been destroyed and spawn more of them. So the turrets will look through the array of enemies inside the weapon, inside the enemy manager, and it'll detect which one is closest to it, and when it finds the one that's closest to it, it basically faces towards it, and if it's in range, it'll begin shooting and doing damage to it. That's about it then. So I'm just going to go through some of the more complex blueprints. So start off with the pickups. So in the pickups there is just a item info variable which just has all of the data. Which it is a struct. So this has an ID, which is just a class reference to a blueprint, which will be itself. Has icons, names, and stuff, which will show up in the UI when you draw in the UI, and the amount, which will determine how many of that item you have, or it will determine how many you actually pick up. So for the bullets, you have pick up 20, so for each of the items that actually drop, you actually pick up 20 bullets. Then in the inventory itself, when you pick it up, you get the item info, so which you can pass through it from just through an interface here, and then tell it to add. When it adds, it'll basically look to see how much weight you have in your inventory already, and if your inventory isn't full, it allows you to add it. It then checks to see whether this item is stackable, and if it is stackable, it does a loop through your entire array inside your inventory and see whether you have a item in there already which has the same ID as the one you're trying to add. And if you do, then it will break out of this loop and set has found item, and when this is true, it has to add or set the array element that you've just found, this one here, and change all of the variables, which is basically just passing across the ones that of the one that is already in there, apart from the amount, where it adds the amount from the one that you're just passing through to add. It just adds that to the one you already have in there and sets that amount. If it manages to get to the end of this and it doesn't have that item already in the inventory, then it just adds a new item to the inventory array. The remove is just the same, apart from instead of adding, it's just minusing, and you just pass through the one you want to remove, and the amount of them that you want to remove. If that new amount is going to be less than 0, it removes the item, and then if you want to drop it, it'll do that same remove, but it just spawns that new actor, which will be set from the variable inside the data structure, and it just gets a random location around the character, and then tells that item that it has dropped, and this basically goes into the item and sets the new amount to the amount that you have just dropped of that item. So instead of dropping 20 for the bullets, you can set that to be only you've dropped 1. So next is the turrets. The base turret has all of the logic base for when you're finding an enemy. It basically looks inside the enemy manager, which will have a reference to all of the different enemies. It looks through of them, finds which one has the shortest distance, and then sets that as the nearest enemy. Once it's found the nearest enemy, then it can rotate the different components of the turret towards that that enemy. And then once one is in range, then it basically fires. So when it's in the attack range, it sets a timer and fires that. So in the manager itself, that's the button, that's the manager. In the manager itself, when you start a new wave, you just do you spawn actors based on the wave number. So if you are on wave 4, then you spawn 4 new enemies from new enemy area. Then you bind to that enemy's event destroyed, and when you destroy it, you just remove one from the array. So then once your array is equal to 0, you start the next wave. That's about it, really.